Sarah Thomas sat in her hotel room in downtown Boston, exhausted from a day of back-to-back real estate seminars. The city was alive with the buzz of the night, but her mind was preoccupied, still processing the information and connections from the day. It had been a long week, and she was ready to put her feet up and relax. But her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the message on her screen. It was from her cousin, Jenna. "You need to see this. I'm so sorry." Beneath the message was a link to a video. Sarah frowned, confusion creeping in as she tapped the link. She didn't know what Jenna could possibly want to show her. Her fingers hovered over the screen, hesitating. She had a bad feeling about it, but curiosity won out. She opened the video, her heart sinking as the image appeared on the screen. The camera was positioned awkwardly, angled just right to capture the scene without being noticed. She recognized the place instantly. Her childhood home, the same one where she had spent so many family dinners, the table where they had laughed, fought, and celebrated. But this time, it was different. The voice of her mother, Patricia Thomas, filled the room. "Oh, please," Patricia scoffed, rolling her eyes dramatically. "My daughter thinks selling houses makes her successful. She couldn't hack it in nursing school, and now she's just wandering through life like a desperate failure." Sarah's chest tightened. She froze, staring at her phone screen, her hand trembling slightly. This was happening. Her mother, sitting at the family dinner table, was talking about her as if she wasn't even there. The camera angle shifted, and Sarah could see her mother clearly now, sipping from a glass of wine, completely unaware that her every word was being recorded. The familiar setting of their dining room seemed colder now, tainted by the cruelty of Patricia's words. "She couldn't even finish nursing school," Patricia continued, her voice laced with disdain. "Came home crying about how hard the exams were. Pathetic. And now she thinks selling a house every few months makes her successful." Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. It felt like the room was closing in on her, the weight of her mother's words pressing down like an anchor. The video continued, with Patricia laughing at her, belittling the very career Sarah had built to support her mother. Uncle James and Aunt Diane were there too. They chuckled along as if it were a joke, as if Sarah's years of sacrifice, her late nights working, and the money she had spent to take care of her mother were nothing more than a punchline. Sarah's mind raced. She had spent the last 5 years of her life taking care of her mother after the rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. She had put everything on hold, her nursing career, her savings, her personal life, to make sure her mother had the best care possible. And now she was being mocked. She felt tears well up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. This wasn't the time to cry. She had to face this, confront it. Her heart pounded in her chest as she watched the video, unable to look away. The reality of her mother's harsh criticism was like a punch in the gut. Patricia had always been tough, always had high expectations, but this was different. This was personal. It was cruel, and it was public. The live stream continued for a few more minutes before Jenna finally stopped recording, but the damage had been done. Sarah felt a deep, gnawing ache in her chest. She had given so much of herself, sacrificed so much of her life for this woman, and this was how she was treated? The video ended, and Sarah sat there in stunned silence, staring at the screen. Her phone buzzed again. It was a message from Jenna. "I'm so sorry you had to see that. I didn't realize what she was saying until it was too late. Do you want me to take it down?" Sarah stared at the screen for a long time, her mind spinning. She could feel the heat of anger rising in her chest, but there was something else, too. Something that had been building up for years, but she had never fully acknowledged. The guilt, the sacrifice, the constant feeling of being unappreciated. This was the moment that changed everything. She typed back a simple response. "No, leave it up. I need to show you something tomorrow when I get back." Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady her shaking hands. This was the moment she had been avoiding for years, but now she had no choice. She had to face the truth about her mother. She had to face the truth about herself. Sarah Thomas used to have a very different life. 5 years ago, at the age of 27, she had been thriving in nursing school. It was everything she had dreamed of, helping others, making a difference, and building a career she could be proud of. Her days were busy with classes, clinical rotations, and late-night study sessions, but she loved every minute of it. She could see the light at the end of the tunnel, a future full of promise and purpose. But everything changed with one phone call. She was in the middle of her pediatric rotation when her phone buzzed. She saw the name Patricia flashing on the screen. Her mother never called during the day unless it was something serious. With a sinking feeling in her chest, Sarah stepped into the hallway to answer. Her mother's voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. I collapsed at work," Patricia said. "They brought me to the hospital. I don't know what's wrong." Sarah dropped everything. She left the clinic, called a cab, and rushed to the hospital. By the time she arrived, her mother had already been admitted. Patricia's normally commanding presence was diminished. She looked small, fragile, and afraid as she lay in the hospital bed. "It's not fair," Patricia said, tears streaming down her face. "How am I supposed to afford all this? The insurance barely covers anything." Sarah held her mother's hand. Her own fear and worry kept tightly in check. "We'll figure it out together, Mom," she promised. "We'll get through this." The diagnosis came quickly: aggressive rheumatoid arthritis. Patricia would need ongoing treatment, physical therapy, and expensive medications. The doctors explained that while the disease could be managed, it wouldn't go away. Sarah's mother was going to need help, and a lot of it. Sarah's father had passed away when she was a teenager, leaving her and her mother to rely on each other. Despite her mother's often critical and demanding nature, Sarah had always felt a sense of loyalty. She believed they had a bond, that they were in this together. When her mother's health took this sudden turn, Sarah felt it was her duty to step up. But stepping up meant making sacrifices. At first, she tried to juggle nursing school with caring for her mother. She drove Patricia to her appointments, handled her insurance paperwork, and spent countless hours on the phone arguing with insurance companies. Sarah learned how to navigate the complex maze of medical billing and pharmacy refills. Every evening after clinicals, she'd rush home to help her mother with mobility exercises, prepare meals, and make sure she was comfortable. It quickly became overwhelming. The stress of school, combined with the emotional and physical demands of caregiving, took its toll. Sarah started missing classes. Her grades slipped. The dream that once felt so close suddenly seemed out of reach. When Patricia's condition worsened and required more specialized treatments, the medical bills piled up. Sarah's part-time job at a coffee shop wasn't enough to cover it. Her savings dwindled. She had to make a choice. Real estate had always been something she considered as a temporary option, just until her mother's health stabilized. The flexible hours and the potential for decent income seemed like the only viable solution. So Sarah made the decision that would change the trajectory of her life. She paused her nursing education, obtained her real estate license, and threw herself into the market. At first, she was hopeful. She told herself it was just temporary, that she'd go back to nursing school once her mother was in a better place. But as the months turned into years, the reality of her situation became clear. Her mother's health had improved with treatment, but the cost remained astronomical. The insurance still didn't cover everything, and Sarah often found herself maxing out credit cards to ensure Patricia got the care she needed. Her real estate career began to take off. She closed her first few deals, started building a reputation, and slowly built a client base. On the surface, it looked like she was thriving. Friends and colleagues would congratulate her on her success, but they didn't see the hours of work behind the scenes. They didn't see the nights she spent sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through stacks of medical bills. They didn't see her pleading with pharmacy techs to approve a prescription, or the mornings she spent arguing with insurance representatives to cover a treatment her mother desperately needed. For every success Sarah achieved in real estate, there was an equal amount of stress, sacrifice, and emotional strain. She was constantly juggling multiple roles: real estate agent, caregiver, financial manager, and emotional support for her mother. And through it all, Patricia rarely showed gratitude. "Oh, Sarah, you're so responsible," Patricia would say occasionally. But the words felt hollow. They were often followed by backhanded comments about how Patricia wished Sarah had stayed in nursing school, how it was such a shame that Sarah didn't finish what she started. Each time Sarah pushed those comments aside, she told herself her mother was just frustrated that the illness was talking, not Patricia. But the years of hearing that she wasn't good enough, that she was just selling houses because she couldn't cut it as a nurse, started to take their toll. Patricia's criticisms became a weight that Sarah carried with her every day. Sarah tried to focus on the positives. She was making a decent living, she was supporting her mother, she had become the person everyone could count on. But that person, the responsible caregiver and successful agent, was not the person Sarah wanted to be. She missed nursing school. She missed feeling like her life had purpose beyond paying bills and managing someone else's health. It was supposed to be temporary, just until Patricia stabilized, just until Sarah could save enough to return to school. But temporary turned into months, then years. And with every passing year, the dream of going back to nursing school felt further away. Sarah began to wonder if she would ever get her life back. The morning sunlight seeped through the curtains of Sarah's small, cluttered home office. She had returned from Boston late the night before, too exhausted to think. But as the first rays of light warmed the room, the events of the past day came rushing back. Her mother's words, preserved forever in Jenna's Livestream, were a relentless echo in her mind. Sarah stared at her laptop. On the screen was the still image of her mother from the video, mid-gesture, her mouth forming the cutting words Sarah could now recite by heart. The disbelief she had felt the night before was gone. In its place was something far more powerful: clarity. She had sacrificed everything, her education, her savings, her peace of mind, to care for a woman who not only failed to appreciate it, but also openly ridiculed her for it. And now, for the first time in years, Sarah allowed herself to truly feel that betrayal. Her mother's words weren't a one-time lapse or a bad day. They were a reflection of how Patricia truly viewed her. No amount of patience, no number of sleepless nights spent managing her medical care, had earned Sarah even a shred of respect. Sarah closed the laptop. She couldn't bear to look at the video any longer. But the damage was done. And in some small, twisted way, it was a blessing. Seeing her mother's true feelings laid bare on camera was the wake-up call Sarah had needed for years. Later that morning, Sarah texted Jenna, "Leave the video up. I need it." Jenna replied almost immediately, "Are you sure? I'm so sorry you had to see it." "I'm sure," Sarah typed back. She wasn't sure what she would do with the video yet, but she knew she couldn't let it disappear. She needed the truth out in the open. Not just for herself, but for the family members who always took Patricia's side without question. Sarah spent the rest of the morning gathering documents. Over the years, she had kept meticulous records of every expense, every insurance battle, every dollar that had gone into her mother's care. At the time, she had thought it was just good financial housekeeping. Now she realized it was evidence, proof of the lengths she had gone to for Patricia and how those efforts had been dismissed. She pulled out her filing cabinet, combing through tax documents, medical invoices, and pharmacy receipts. The stack of papers grew taller as the hours ticked by. By lunchtime, Sarah had a folder labeled Mom's Medical Care that was thick enough to be a small novel. For a moment, she sat back and looked at the collection of papers. Every page represented a choice she had made: to skip a vacation, to delay buying a reliable car, to ignore her own dreams. All for a woman who had mocked her as a pathetic failure. Sarah's jaw tightened. Enough was enough. That afternoon, Sarah met Jenna at their usual coffee shop. The small cafe was a neighborhood staple, with mismatched furniture and the smell of freshly brewed espresso. Jenna was already there, sitting in a corner booth, her vibrant blue hair standing out among the other customers. She looked up as Sarah approached, her face filled with guilt. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Jenna said as Sarah slid into the seat across from her. "I swear I didn't mean for her to say those things. I didn't even realize until—" Sarah held up a hand, cutting her off. "It's not your fault, Jenna. In a way, you did me a favor." Jenna frowned. "A favor? How?" Without a word, Sarah placed the thick folder on the table and opened it. Inside were pages upon pages of receipts, invoices, and spreadsheets. Jenna leaned forward, her eyes widening as she flipped through the documents. "Wait, you paid for all of this?" Jenna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every dollar," Sarah replied. Every prescription, every specialist visit, every insurance premium. That's over $100,000 I spent, Jenna. My entire life savings. I put my nursing career on hold, poured all my money into her care, and she still thinks I'm a failure. Jenna sat back, shaking her head in disbelief. I had no idea, and she still said all those things? That's insane. It is, Sarah said, her voice steady. But it's also the truth, and now I'm done. That night, Sarah drafted an email to her extended family. She kept it simple, factual, and impossible to misinterpret. Dear family, she wrote, after much consideration, I've decided to step away from managing Mom's medical care and finances. Over the past 5 years, I've covered over $100,000 in expenses, including insurance premiums, medications, and specialist visits. I've done so at great personal cost, both financially and emotionally. While I'm grateful for the moments of support from some of you, I can no longer bear the burden alone. I hope you understand that this was not an easy decision. Attached, you'll find a detailed record of the expenses I've covered. Please know that I am stepping away for my own well-being, and I hope you'll respect my choice. She hit send and leaned back in her chair. For the first time in years, she felt a small measure of peace. She wasn't sure how the family would react, but she no longer cared. Her decision was made. Sarah's next message was to her mother. Effective immediately, I will no longer be managing your medical care or finances. You'll need to make other arrangements. It wasn't cold or cruel. It was simply the truth. Sarah turned off her phone and closed her laptop. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like her own. A day after Sarah sent the email, the fallout began. Her phone buzzed continuously with incoming messages and missed calls from relatives. The first few were from Aunt Diane, scolding her for abandoning her mother in her time of need. Do you have any idea how selfish this looks? One text read. We all have struggles, but we don't just walk away from family. Sarah deleted the message without replying. She didn't have the energy to argue with people who had never lifted a finger to help. Then came the call from Uncle James. Sarah answered reluctantly. Uncle James, she said flatly, bracing herself, what's all this about you stepping away from Patricia's care? His voice carried both confusion and judgment. She's your mother, Sarah. Sarah took a deep breath. I've been her sole caregiver, her financial support, and her advocate for over 5 years. I've put my entire life on hold for her. I'm not abandoning her, Uncle James. I'm just done sacrificing myself. And there was a long pause on the other end of the line. You know, it's hard for us to understand why you do this, he finally said. Because none of you have ever stepped in to help, Sarah replied, her voice sharp. I've carried this alone, and now I need to take care of myself. If you have a problem with that, I suggest you speak to someone who actually understands the situation. She hung up, her hands shaking. She had expected pushback, but the reality of her relatives' reactions still stung. They didn't see her sacrifices. They only saw her decision to stop. By the end of the day, Sarah had blocked several numbers, including her mother's. She didn't do it lightly, but the stream of accusatory messages and missed calls was overwhelming. Patricia's messages, in particular, were a mix of guilt-tripping and outright anger. You're just going to leave me like this? After everything I've done for you? I need you to fix this insurance mess right now. Each message made Sarah's resolve stronger. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing to clean up someone else's mess. She muted her phone and went for a walk. The crisp autumn air was a welcome change from the suffocating atmosphere of her home. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a sliver of freedom. 3 days later, Sarah was in the admissions office at Boston City Nursing School, re-enrolling in the program she had left behind years earlier. You've been away from the program for a while, the advisor said, scanning her records. But your grades were excellent. You'll need to take a placement exam, of course, but I don't see any reason why we can't get you back on track. Sarah nodded. I'm ready, she said, surprising even herself with the steadiness in her voice. I've been reviewing my old textbooks. I know it'll be a challenge, but I'm ready. As she walked out of the office, a weight seemed to lift from her shoulders. She had been so focused on supporting her mother that she had forgotten what it felt like to pursue her own dreams. Now, with her re-enrollment finalized, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. Back at home, Sarah began reorganizing her life. She couldn't handle the same volume of real estate clients while attending nursing school, so she decided to focus on fewer, higher-value properties. She also hired a part-time assistant to handle paperwork and coordinate showings. The reduced workload allowed her to dedicate more time to her studies. It wasn't seamless. There were late nights, scheduling conflicts, and moments of self-doubt. But for each hurdle she faced, Sarah reminded herself why she was doing this: to reclaim her life, to follow her passion, and to finally stop living solely for someone else's benefit. Meanwhile, the family's reaction continued to evolve. Some relatives never reached out again. Others, like Aunt Bridget, quietly offered words of support. "It takes courage to stand up for yourself," Bridget said in a brief phone call. "Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for doing what's right for you." For the first time, Sarah felt a genuine connection with a family member who understood her perspective. The confrontation she had been dreading came a week later. Sarah was in the middle of a showing when she noticed her mother's car parked across the street. Patricia was leaning heavily on her cane, clearly waiting for Sarah to finish. When the clients left, Sarah took a deep breath and walked over. "Mom, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone calm but firm. "We need to talk," Patricia said, her voice low and strained. Sarah nodded. "Okay. What's on your mind?" Patricia looked away, then back at Sarah. "You know I can't manage all this without you." "Then you'll have to find another way," Sarah replied. "Because I can't keep doing it. I need to live my own life." "That's easy for you to say," Patricia snapped. "You've always had everything handed to you. You don't know what it's like to struggle." Sarah almost laughed at the absurdity of the statement. "Mom, I've put my entire life on hold for you. I've paid for everything, managed everything, and put my dreams aside. How is that having everything handed to me?" Patricia's face flushed. "You're twisting things. I only said those things because I was frustrated. You know I didn't mean it." "No, you said them because you believe them," Sarah countered. "And now I'm done. I'm not here to argue. I'm just here to tell you that it's time for both of us to move on." Patricia's shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked more tired than angry. "And what am I supposed to do now?" "You'll figure it out," Sarah said. "You always do." She turned and walked away, leaving her mother standing in the parking lot. In the weeks that followed, Sarah found herself thriving in her new routine. She was finally living for herself, and it felt liberating. Her days were full of studying, meeting clients, and preparing for her placement exam. The anger and resentment that had weighed her down for years began to fade. In its place was a quiet confidence that she hadn't felt in a long time. Sarah still had moments of doubt, but they were quickly replaced by the knowledge that she had made the right decision. For the first time in years, she felt free. The next 3 months passed in a blur of activity. Sarah settled into her new routine, balancing her real estate clients with her nursing classes. It wasn't easy. Her schedule was packed, and there were moments when the weight of it all threatened to overwhelm her. But every time she felt like giving up, she reminded herself of what she was working toward, a life that was truly hers. The placement exam had been nerve-wracking, but Sarah had done well. Her instructors even commented on her determination and discipline, qualities honed during her years of managing her mother's care and her own business. As the weeks went on, she found that her prior experience gave her an edge in the classroom and clinical settings. She was no stranger to stress or problem-solving under pressure. Meanwhile, her real estate business continued to thrive. Focusing on a smaller number of higher-value clients proved to be a smart move. With the help of her new assistant, she was able to provide a more personalized service, which earned her glowing referrals. The steady stream of income gave her financial security, allowing her to fully concentrate on her studies. It wasn't long before Sarah's hard work started to pay off in more tangible ways. The Boston Real Estate Association held its annual awards ceremony, and Sarah was shocked to find out she'd been nominated for the Resilience in Real Estate Award. The honor was given to agents who had overcome significant challenges while maintaining a successful business. "You're a shoo-in," her colleague Jeffrey said at a team meeting. "Nobody's been through more than you, and you've come out stronger on the other side." At first, Sarah was hesitant to attend the ceremony. It felt strange to be recognized for something she had never sought, enduring hardships she had never asked for. But then she realized this was exactly why she needed to go. This wasn't about seeking validation from others. It was about validating herself. The night of the ceremony, Sarah put on a navy blue dress that she had been saving for a special occasion. As she entered the grand ballroom, she was greeted by colleagues and industry leaders who congratulated her on her nomination. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she belonged. When her name was announced as the winner, Sarah was momentarily stunned. She walked up to the podium, her hands trembling slightly as she accepted the Crystal Award. "This means more to me than I can say," she began. "The past few years have been some of the most challenging of my life. Balancing a demanding career with personal obligations has pushed me in ways I never imagined. But it's also taught me resilience, perseverance, and the importance of following my own path. Real estate is about more than selling homes. It's about helping people transition into a new chapter of their lives. And that's exactly what I've been doing for myself. This award isn't just for professional resilience. It's a reminder that no matter how difficult the journey, we can always find a way forward." The applause was deafening, but what stayed with Sarah the most was the sense of peace that washed over her. She had worked hard, endured much, and finally felt like she was coming into her own. That night, as Sarah placed the award on her mantel, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her Uncle Patrick. "Saw your picture in the paper. Proud of you." Sarah stared at the message for a moment. It wasn't an apology, but it was a step. She replied simply, "Thanks." The family dynamics had shifted. Some relatives, like Aunt Bridget, continued to reach out with words of encouragement. Others stayed silent, likely still holding on to their misconceptions. But Sarah no longer felt the need to explain herself. Her life was moving forward, and that was all that mattered. Her mother's attempts to guilt her had diminished. The last message Sarah received from Patricia was a short one. "I saw the award. Good for you." Sarah didn't reply, but the message gave her a strange sense of closure. Her mother's recognition, however small, was enough. By the time Sarah's first nursing semester came to a close, she was thriving. She had built a new support network of fellow students and colleagues, people who respected her for her strength and dedication. Her instructors often praised her for her quick thinking and empathy, traits she had honed during her years as a caregiver. One evening, Sarah found herself sitting at her desk, reviewing her notes for an upcoming exam. She glanced at the award on the shelf, and then at her class schedule pinned to the bulletin board. The person she had been a year ago felt like a distant memory. She was no longer defined by her mother's needs or her family's expectations. She had reclaimed her identity, her ambitions, and her happiness. The final piece of redemption came during a quiet moment at the hospital. Sarah was finishing her clinical rotation when a fellow nursing student approached her. "Hey, Sarah," the student said. "I just wanted to say thanks. That advice you gave me last week about handling a difficult patient, it worked. I really look up to you." Sarah smiled. "Thanks. I'm glad it helped." It was a small interaction, but it meant the world to Sarah. For so long, she had poured her energy into helping someone who never appreciated it. Now, she was making a difference for people who did. As she left the hospital that evening, Sarah looked up at the clear night sky. The future felt wide open. The burden she had carried for years was gone, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. She was no longer the woman who had been mocked and dismissed. She was a nurse in the making, a successful entrepreneur, and, most importantly, herself. For Sarah, redemption wasn't about changing her mother's opinion or fixing her family's dynamics. It was about finding her own voice, following her dreams, and realizing that she had always been enough.